Gwen Stacy was one of the most important figures in Peter Parker's early life and the first great love of Spider-Man. Introduced during the 1960s, she became a grounding presence in Peter's world, admired for her intelligence, warmth, and compassion. Her death in The Amazing Spider-Man 121 would become one of the most defining and heartbreaking moments in Marvel's history. The events leading to her demise were shaped by the return of Norman Osborn as the Green Goblin. After regaining his fractured memories and fueled by personal grief, Osborn lashed out at Spider-Man by striking where it would hurt the most: his personal life. Gwen, unaware of Peter's secret identity, became a tragic pawn in their escalating conflict. For years, she had been a symbol of Peter's hope for normalcy, which made her sudden loss even more devastating. On that fateful night, the Green Goblin abducted Gwen and hurled her from a bridge during his battle with Spider-Man. Peter acted instantly, firing a web line that caught her before she could hit the water below. Yet when he pulled her up, she was lifeless. Whether Gwen had already died before the fall, or from the whiplash of Spider-Man's rescue remains debated, but the moment reshaped both Peter Parker and the comic book medium. Gwen's death haunted Spider-Man, straining his relationships and reminding him that sacrifice defined his life. For readers, it shattered the illusion of guaranteed happy endings, marking a turning point into the darker, more mature Bronze Age of comics. Jean Grey, one of the founding members of the X-Men, was long considered the emotional heart of the team. Gifted with formidable telepathic and telekinetic abilities, she became even more powerful after merging with the Phoenix Force, a cosmic entity of near-limitless energy. As Phoenix, she was no longer just a mutant, but a being capable of reshaping galaxies. This transformation elevated her status within the Marvel Universe, but also made her eventual downfall one of its most tragic moments. The road to her death was paved during the celebrated Dark Phoenix saga. Manipulated by Mastermind and the Hellfire Club, Phoenix lost control and embraced her darker impulses. Her corruption culminated in an act of unthinkable destruction, consuming a star and annihilating an entire alien civilization. With her power spiraling beyond morality, she drew the attention of the Shi'ar Empire, who declared her too dangerous to exist. To settle her fate, the X-Men were forced into battle against the Imperial Guard on the Moon. During this conflict, Jean briefly reclaimed her humanity, realizing the catastrophic threat she posed if she lost control again. She made the ultimate choice. Activating an ancient alien weapon, she sacrificed herself before the Phoenix could re-emerge. Her final act was not one of conquest but of love, sparing both her friends and the universe from further devastation. Jean's death devastated the X-Men, especially Cyclops, who had shared a deep bond with her. Though Jean Grey would later return through resurrections, her self-destruction in X-Men 137 remains one of Marvel's most iconic and heartbreaking deaths. Mar-Vell, the original Captain Marvel, was a Kree warrior who defined the Empire's ambitions and chose to defend Earth. Over time, he became one of Marvel Universe's most respected cosmic heroes, wielding the Negabands to channel vast power and serving as a guardian of both Earth and the stars. His courage, nobility, and humanity earned him a revered place among heroes. The seeds of his tragic death were sown years earlier in a battle with the villain Nitro. Exposed to a deadly nerve gas, Mar-Vell unknowingly absorbed a fatal dose of carcinogens. The effects went undetected until much later, when his declining health revealed an incurable cancer. Ironically, the same Negabands that empowered him prevented effective treatment, leaving him powerless against an enemy he could not punch or outwit. As his condition worsened, the story chronicled Mar-Vell's final days. Surrounded by fellow heroes and even some enemies, he was honored with dignity and respect as he prepared for the inevitable. In his final dreamlike visions, he confronted Thanos, not as a bitter foe, but as a strange guide leading him toward Mistress Death. Ultimately, Captain Marvel died quietly, succumbing to illness rather than in battle, a rare and deeply human fate for a superhero. Tony Stark, better known as Iron Man, was the cornerstone of the Marvel Cinematic Universe from its inception in 2008. As a genius inventor, billionaire, and one of the founding members of the Avengers, Stark's journey was one of transformation, from self-absorbed arms dealer to selfless protector of humanity. His charisma and vulnerability made him one of the most beloved characters in Marvel history, and his ultimate sacrifice in Avengers Endgame became the emotional climax of the Infinity Saga. The build-up to Stark's final act stretched across more than a decade of storytelling. After surviving the original battle with Thanos in Avengers Infinity War, Tony was left haunted by failure and guilt over the lives lost in the snap. Despite a brief attempt at retirement with Pepper Potts and their daughter Morgan, he could not turn away when the chance arose to undo Thanos' devastation. With the Avengers devising the time heist to retrieve the Infinity Stones, Stark knew the mission might demand everything from him. In the climactic battle, Thanos once again threatened to annihilate the universe. As the Mad Titan seized the stones, Tony acted with both brilliance and bravery. In a swift move, he transferred the stones into his own armor, proclaiming "I am Iron Man," before snapping Thanos and his army into dust. The immense cosmic energy proved fatal, leaving Tony mortally wounded. Heroes and allies mourned his passing, and the world honored him as the man who saved half of existence. His legacy endured through Spider-Man, who saw Stark as a mentor, and through successors like Riri Williams, inspired by his genius. Stark's death marked not only the end of his arc, but also the closing of an era, cementing him as the defining hero of the MCU's first saga. Benjamin Uncle Ben Parker was not a superhero, but his influence shaped one of Marvel's greatest icons. As the guardian and father figure of Peter Parker, he embodied kindness, humility, and moral clarity. His death in Amazing Fantasy 15 provided the emotional foundation for Spider-Man's origin, and his absence became the guiding presence that defined Peter's life as a hero. The tragedy unfolded after Peter Parker first gained his spider powers. Thrilled by fame and fortune, he used his abilities for personal gain, even refusing to stop a fleeing burglar because it was not his responsibility. This single moment of apathy set the stage for devastating consequences. Peter returned home to discover that his beloved uncle had been killed during a burglary. Peter hunted down the criminal, only to realize in horror that it was the same thief he had earlier allowed to escape. This realization crushed Peter. Uncle Ben had been taken not by a supervillain, but by a common criminal. From this wound emerged the defining ideology of Spider-Man. With great power comes great responsibility. In the aftermath, Spider-Man's every action became a tribute to his uncle's memory. The death of Uncle Ben transformed a gifted teenager into a selfless hero. Charles Xavier, known as Professor X, was the visionary founder of the X-Men and one of Marvel's most influential leaders. A powerful telepath and advocate for peaceful coexistence between humans and mutants, he dedicated his life to guiding young mutants and defending a world that often feared them. His death during the climatic events of Avengers vs. X-Men 11 shocked both readers and characters, marking the fall of a figure who symbolized hope for mutant kind. The build-up to his death came during the Phoenix 5 storyline, where 5 mutants, Cyclops, Emma Frost, Namor, Colossus, and Magic, were empowered by fragments of the Phoenix Force. Initially heralded as saviors, they gradually succumbed to corruption, with Cyclops in particular growing increasingly consumed by the cosmic power. Xavier, long a father figure to Scott Summers, was horrified to see his former student descending into tyranny. His attempts at intervention carried both symbolic weight and personal anguish, as the mentor confronted the protege he once trusted above all others. The fatal confrontation occurred when Cyclops, fully possessed by the Dark Phoenix, faced off against the Avengers and X-Men. In a desperate attempt to stop him, Xavier reached out telepathically, urging Scott to regain control. Instead, Cyclops lashed out, striking Xavier down with Phoenix power. The moment was brutal and final. Professor X was left lifeless, killed by the very student he raised as a son. The aftermath was devastating. Cyclops, consumed by guilt, admitted responsibility, while the mutant community mourned the loss for its greatest advocate. For the X-Men, Xavier's death marked the end of an era, shattering their moral compass and forcing them to confront the dangers of unchecked power. Steve Rogers, better known as Captain America, stood as the living embodiment of American ideals: courage, sacrifice, and integrity. As the leader of the Avengers and a moral compass for countless heroes, his presence shaped the Marvel Universe for decades. His assassination in the aftermath of the Civil War storyline marked one of the most shocking moments in modern comics, symbolizing the loss of the very dream he represented. The road to his death began with the Superhuman Registration Act, which split the superhero community. Captain America led the resistance against enforced registration, while Iron Man stood at the head of government-backed forces. Their conflict culminated in Civil War VII, where Rogers surrendered upon realizing that his fight threatened the civilians he sought to protect. His decision was an act of humility, but it also left him vulnerable. As Rogers was escorted to trial in Captain America 25, the unthinkable occurred. A sniper's bullet struck him, fired by Crossbones under the Red Skull's orders. Amid the chaos, Sharon Carter, longtime ally and lover of Steve, delivered the fatal shots, her will subverted by the manipulations of Dr. Faustus. The assassination was brutal in its intimacy, claiming the life of a hero not in battle against cosmic forces, but on the courthouse steps of his own nation. In the aftermath, heroes mourned, public grieved, and blame fractured the community further. Bucky Barnes, driven by rage, eventually took up the shield, honoring Steve's legacy as the new Captain America. Wolverine, also known as Logan, was one of Marvel's most enduring figures, and Hugh Jackman's portrayal of the character defined the X-Men film franchise for nearly 2 decades. Known for his healing factor, adamantium claws, and tough but loyal nature, Wolverine symbolized both savagery and compassion. His death in the movie Logan was not only the end of Jackman's time as the character, but also one of the most heartfelt farewells in superhero cinema, delivering closure to a character long haunted by pain and loss. The film presented Logan in a world where mutants were nearly extinct, aging and weakened, his healing ability faltering. Logan lived a broken existence while caring for a dying Professor X. His life changed when he discovered Laura, a young mutant created from his DNA. Initially reluctant to accept her, Logan was gradually drawn into the role of protector and father, even when he struggled with his own mortality. The climax arrived when Logan and Laura confronted Transigen's forces in their ultimate weapon X-24, a savage clone of Wolverine. Brutally wounded and impaled on a tree during the fight, Logan was fatally injured, unable to heal. Laura killed X-24 with an adamantium bullet, but it was too late for her father. In his final moments, Logan acknowledged Laura as his daughter, sharing a tender farewell before dying in her arms. Laura buried him, marking his grave with a simple X, a symbol of his life as an X-Man. Logan's death resonated deeply with fans, representing both the end of an era and the culmination of a tragic yet heroic journey. Sergei Kravenov, better known as Kraven the Hunter, was long one of Spider-Man's most formidable foes. A master tracker and warrior obsessed with proving his superiority, Kraven's rivalry with Spider-Man was less about conquest and more about pride. His death in Kraven's Last Hunt transformed him from a recurring villain into a tragic figure, making the storyline one of the most acclaimed Spider-Man tales ever told. The build-up came at a time when Spider-Man himself was reflecting on mortality, newly married to Mary Jane Watson, and facing a darker world. For Kraven, age and disillusionment fed a growing desperation. He resolved to end his lifelong hunt not by killing Spider-Man outright, but by demonstrating he could replace him and be better. This psychological obsession set the stage for his most shocking act. Kraven struck first with precision, tranquilizing Spider-Man and burying him alive. For 2 weeks, he wore Spider-Man's costume, brutalizing criminals with a savagery Peter never would. To prove his superiority, Kraven single-handedly captured Vermin, a foe Spider-Man had previously required Captain America's help to defeat. For Kraven, this was the ultimate validation. He had bested the Spider on every front. When Spider-Man escaped his grave and confronted him, Kraven did not fight back. Instead, he released Vermin, forcing Spider-Man to face the villain himself. With his point made and his obsession fulfilled, Kraven retired from the hunt in the most final way possible, taking his own life with his rifle. The aftermath left Spider-Man shaken. On readers was greater still. Kraven's death added unprecedented psychological depth to a villain's arc. Kraven's Last Hunt has since been hailed as a masterpiece, remembered for its gothic tone, haunting imagery, and the tragic end of one of Spider-Man's most complex adversaries. Karen Page was one of the earliest and most important supporting characters in Daredevil's history. Serving as Matt Murdock's secretary, confidant, and love interest. Over time, her character embodied both innocence and tragedy, becoming a reflection of Daredevil's own struggles between light and darkness. The build-up to her downfall revealed how far she had strayed from her early days. Addicted to drugs and financially desperate, Karen made a fateful choice. She sold Daredevil's secret identity to a dealer, setting off a chain of events that would allow Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, to dismantle Matt Murdock's life piece by piece. This betrayal, though born of desperation, added a painful layer of tension to her eventual return to Matt's side. Throughout Born Again, Karen became a broken figure, caught in a world of manipulation and violence. Hunted by Fisk's men and racked by guilt, she fled back to Matt seeking forgiveness. Her presence during Murdock's darkest hour symbolized both his human vulnerability and his capacity for compassion, as he chose to protect and forgive her rather than cast her aside. Though Karen survived the Born Again storyline itself, its emotional weight carried forward into her character's legacy. Later arcs would revisit her struggles, culminating in her eventual death years later at the hands of Bullseye. Colossus, born Peter Rasputin, was one of the most enduring members of the X-Men, known for his gentle soul and immense physical power. His ability to transform his body into organic steel made him nearly indestructible, but it was his compassion and loyalty to his family and teammates that truly defined him. His death in Uncanny X-Men 390 was especially emotional, marking the loss of a character whose strength was always tempered by kindness. The build-up to his sacrifice stemmed from the devastating legacy virus, a disease that targeted mutants and had already claimed countless lives, including Colossus's beloved sister, Illyana Rasputin. Illyana's death shattered Peter, leaving him desperate for a way to prevent others from suffering the same fate. When the X-Men discovered a cure, the catch was that it required a mutant subject to activate it, an act that would kill the one who volunteered. Colossus, burdened by grief but resolved to honor his sister, made his choice. He injected himself with the cure, and as it coursed through his veins, his body reacted violently. He collapsed, dying in the arms of his teammates. His final thoughts were of Illyana, a quiet peace settling over him as the legacy virus was eradicated from mutant kind forever. The X-Men mourned not just a teammate, but a brother figure whose selflessness saved countless lives. His death resonated deeply with readers, serving as one of the most heroic sacrifices in X-Men history. Though Colossus was eventually resurrected years later, his sacrifice remains a defining moment. Natasha Romanoff, known as Black Widow, was one of the founding members of the Avengers and a cornerstone of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A former assassin turned hero, her journey from a shadowy operative of the Red Room to a selfless protector of humanity made her one of the franchise's most complex figures. Her death in Avengers Endgame was among the film's most emotional moments, symbolizing both redemption and sacrifice. The build-up to her death was rooted in the Avengers' desperate attempt to undo the destruction caused by Thanos. After learning that recovering the Soul Stone required a sacrifice, Natasha and Hawkeye traveled together to Vormir. Their bond, forged through years of friendship and shared trauma, set the stage for one of the most heart-wrenching choices in the film. Both were determined to be the one to make the sacrifice, with Natasha motivated by the belief that Clint deserved a second chance to be with his family. The death itself unfolded as a struggle between two best friends, willing to give their lives for the other. Ultimately, Natasha outmaneuvered Clint and threw herself from the cliff, ensuring the Avengers would obtain the Soul Stone. Her final act was not of violence, but of ultimate selflessness, a decision she made with clarity and resolve. The aftermath was devastating for the team. Clint was left shattered by her sacrifice, while the Avengers mourned the loss of a comrade who had long been the glue holding them together. Unlike Tony Stark, Natasha received no grand funeral, emphasizing the quiet tragedy of her end. Yet her legacy endured, inspiring her teammates and shaping Clint's future. Nightcrawler, also known as Kurt Wagner, is one of the most beloved members of the X-Men. A mutant with teleportation powers, striking blue appearance, and deep Catholic faith, Kurt often provided the moral and spiritual compass for the team. His compassion and selflessness made him unique among Marvel's heroes, and his death carried immense emotional weight, because he embodied hope even in the darkest times. The Second Coming storyline centered on Hope Summers, the so-called mutant messiah, prophesized to restore mutant kind after years of near extinction. The X-Men and their allies faced relentless assaults from Bastion and his forces, who sought to eliminate Hope before she could fulfill her destiny. Kurt, always protective of younger mutants, became one of her fiercest guardians. The growing danger surrounding Hope, combining with Kurt's strong belief in sacrifice, set the stage for his tragic end. During a desperate battle, Bastion targeted Hope directly. As she attempted to escape, Bastion ambushed her, his hand reaching through a portal to strike her down. In a moment of courage, Nightcrawler teleported repeatedly, pushing his powers to their absolute limit until he ultimately placed himself between Bastion's attack and Hope. Bastion's arm pierced Kurt's chest, mortally wounding him. With his dying breath, Nightcrawler teleported Hope to safety, whispering words of faith and encouragement before succumbing to his injuries. His death devastated the X-Men, specifically Wolverine, who had always seen Kurt as a brother. Hope was shaken but inspired, understanding the depth of sacrifice made for her survival. James Buchanan Bucky Barnes was first introduced in Captain America Comics 1 as Steve Rogers' youthful sidekick during World War II. Unlike other kid companions of the Golden Age, Bucky was more than comic relief. He was an able fighter, spy, and partner who represented loyalty and youthful bravery. His apparent death at the end of the war became one of Marvel's most defining tragedies, symbolizing the heavy price of heroism. In the final days of World War II, Captain America and Bucky faced their longtime enemy, Baron Heinrich Zemo. Zemo launched a drone plane loaded with explosives toward Allied targets. Determined to stop it, Cap and Bucky leapt onto the craft mid-flight. While Captain America tried to disable the plane, Bucky attempted to defuse the bomb's wiring. The circumstances highlighted his courage, but also his recklessness. Bucky was still a teenager carrying the weight of an impossible task. As the plane accelerated over the English Channel, the explosives detonated. Captain America was hurled into the freezing waters, where the super soldier serum preserved him in suspended animation until his later revival. Bucky, however, was presumed killed instantly, his body lost to the blast. Unlike many comic deaths, his sacrifice felt final and absolute, haunting Captain America for decades. Bucky's absence shaped Steve Rogers profoundly. Guilt over his partner's fate became a central part of Cap's character, influencing his leadership style and his distrust of placing young heroes in harm's way. For decades, Marvel framed Bucky's death as permanent, even inspiring the phrase, "No one stays dead in comics except Bucky, Jason Todd, and Uncle Ben." Ironically, Bucky's eventual resurrection as the Winter Soldier in 2005 gave his story new depth, but his World War II death remains one of Marvel's most enduring and emotionally resonant moments. Gamora, the adopted daughter of Thanos and a central member of the Guardians of the Galaxy, stands as one of Marvel's most complex heroines. Known as the deadliest woman in the galaxy, she transformed from assassin to protector, embodying redemption and loyalty. Her death in Avengers Infinity War carried immense emotional weight because it was not only tragic, but also intertwined with the universe's fate. In Infinity War, Gamora becomes central to Thanos' quest for the Infinity Stones. She alone knows the location of the Soul Stone, hidden on Vormir. Her strained yet layered relationship with Thanos, defined by both abuse and a twisted form of paternal affection, intensified the narrative. Early hints, including her deep fear of Thanos and her plea to Peter Quill to kill her rather than let her fall into his hands, foreshadowed the devastating choice to come. On Vormir, Thanos and Gamora are met by the Red Skull, guardian of the Soul Stone. He reveals the cruel requirement. To gain the stone, one must sacrifice what they love most. Initially, Gamora mocks the idea, believing Thanos is incapable of love. But the moment shifts when Thanos sheds tears. His love for Gamora is genuine, twisted as it may be. In one of the film's most haunting scenes, Thanos drags Gamora to the cliff and sacrifices her, her scream echoing as she falls to her death. The Soul Stone manifests in his hand, cementing the loss. Her death devastates the Guardians, specifically Peter Quill, whose grief and rage later contributed to the Avengers' failure against Thanos. Beyond the immediate impact, Gamora's death reshaped the MCU's emotional core. It highlighted the horrifying cost of Thanos' mission and set the stage for Endgame, where a time-displaced version of Gamora re-enters the story. Thank you very much for watching this video, and if you enjoyed, make sure to leave a like, comment down below your thoughts on any of the Marvel deaths I discussed in this video, and subscribe if you would like to see a part 2 or more videos like this one. Thank you again, and goodbye.